into the next one. Let's jump to the SEC this time around. We have the Georgia Bulldogs and the Florida Gators in the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. What do we think of this one? It's a 14.5-point line to the Dogs. CBS 230. Let's start with you, Parks. Is this Parks? I didn't even check.
It's you and Jake. But
Jake,
sorry. My opinion, I can throw it in there.
Go ahead. Jake, you go ahead, man. I didn't write this one down. I didn't see who had it with me.
I'll hash over the back-to-back national champions quick. It's been a while since we've seen this team. I think they had the bye last week since the Brock Bowers injury. So question number one is who steps up? Who's your number one guy? Ladd McConkey and Dominic Lovett, these are two guys that are first-team All-SEC caliber. Now they haven't had the season that their expectations were going into the season. But I think they kind of have that sort of talent to step up in this spot with Bowers possibly out for the year. I look at Ra Thomas as another guy. I think this receiving core for Georgia is pretty good. And I think they have a chance on Saturday to really take advantage of Florida and springboard themselves into this national title contention. But I have a question on Florida's what's the game plan going into the game? I think that with Edwards, Georgia could run the ball for 150 yards and win the game and kind of put you in a stranglehold, or they can let Carson Beck loose and throw for 350 yards. I think he's definitely good enough to do that. He looks like a top 5 SEC quarterback to me. So Florida, what are you trying to eliminate for Georgia here? I would say maybe make the young guy try to beat you, make him prove it, but we'll see otherwise. And Georgia ranks 10th in rush defense. They only give up about 91 yards per game. We talk about Montrell Johnson. We talk about ETN. That's their bread and butter. What are you just going to expect Mertz to throw 35 times and even try to compete in this game? I don't see it. So the strengths for Florida do not match up well with Georgia here. I think Georgia's in a good spot in this big rivalry game in Jacksonville to really get themselves back on the map with their best player out.
I hear what you're saying there. I have the Gators in this situation, and I chose to take the Gators for a couple of reasons. I thought they're getting better and better as the season goes. And it's kind of can you prove that maybe playing at Kentucky was a fluke? Can you maybe say it isn't as tough or it isn't that bad of a football team when they're put up against really good competition? So here's your opportunity, right, in a big rivalry game to play Georgia and a team that is likely going to win the East. So let's jump into the Gators a little bit. 2 straight wins. I know they're up against South Carolina, and I know it's against Vandy, but it still gives you confidence. Mertz has been good quietly. Not a lot of people talking about what Mertz has done this year. 76% completion percentage, 12 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions. You told me last year that he'd come down to Florida and get better in this at that clip. I would have thought they're winning 8-9 games or you're crazy, because it doesn't seem like that was something that I expected, especially with how Florida didn't have the playmakers we saw a year ago. And it just kind of didn't seem like a right thing at the time. Montrell Johnson and Trevor Etienne are going to have to be the guys for me this week. They're going to have to be able to run the football. And can they? I'm not sure. We were just talking about Georgia and how good they are against the run. It's going to be a task. You know, it's also going to be a task is stopping the Georgia rush offense, because Florida got trounced, bullied, pushed around when they went up to Lexington and played Kentucky. They almost gave up 300 yards on the ground. Like, that can't happen again. And this is a team that can take advantage of it. Not only can they take advantage of it, but then they can exploit you through the air after they've done it a little bit. So can Florida get to that point? Good news on the offensive side of the ball is if we can run the ball a little bit as the Gators, we're not really putting ourselves in a spot where we're worried about a pass rush. We have a good offensive line that's good in pass pro. Georgia hasn't had the defensive pass rush that we've seen in years past. And I think that's a big confidence builder and a big piece of this equation. If we can get the ball out of Mertz's hands and maybe we can continue to elevate that passing game, that's kind of seemed like it's been more of the backbone of this offense. And Napier is that running guy, but they've leaned on the pass game, and it hasn't been deep balls down the field. It's been intermediate stuff, it quick and out of his hands. Again, what comes to light? Like, what rises to the top? Does Florida stop the run and commit, and then on the offensive side commit to it, or does Georgia stop the run and then just blow Florida away on the offensive side of the ball? It's going to be tough. Florida's got to create havoc in the backfield. Simple as that. You've got to get to you got to get to the quarterback. And Beck, you got to make sure he's uncomfortable because he looks like he's getting more and more comfortable, and he hasn't been under too much stress throughout this season. So I think that's your key. You got to get to Beck and make it a little bit of hell. You got to control the line of scrimmage in the ground game, offensive and defensive. And can Mertz continue his success in the short, intermediate passing game? And maybe we can hit one or two over the top randomly. You got to come out swinging and just land a big one, a big right hook at some point in this game. So that's where I am with the Gators. That's why I kind of wanted to break them down. I believe Parks and Reese, you're first up on your ATS pick for this one, 14.5 actually. So
you're not going to catch me dead betting against a back-to-back national champ, and especially when Graham Mertz. I think this is the kind of the game where you get a Wisconsin-style Graham Mertz. I know he's a different player this year, and he's more talented, and he's been 10 times better across the board, I would say, at Florida than he was at Wisconsin. But I think against a defense of this caliber, he's going to revert back to his old ways. And yeah, give me the Dogs.
Reese.
Yeah, this reminds me of that Georgia-Kentucky game a while ago where people wanted to think something's going to happen. Give me the Dogs.
Fair enough. That's simple enough said. I like that. That's a good point. That just happened too.
Schaefer?
Georgia shows up for big games, man. And I look at the two big road games that Florida had on their schedule this year in Utah and Kentucky, and it went just so far south. And now I know this isn't a road game, it's a neutral site game, but kind of the same difference. Give me the Dogs, and I think they're going to cover easy.
Man, I want to take the Gators so bad, plus the number. But I'm not that far back in the standings, so I think this is not the week to kind of take those shots. So I'll go with UGA as well.
That's a problem.
That's a problem.
We won last week. We did good last week, boys.
Yeah,
we did fine last week. It didn't look good, but
it didn't look good, but it worked out well. Hey, let's go to the next one. How about into the Big 12? We jump.